too am truly honored to be here with such a coalition group that Peaceful Skies has pulled together. I think it's the start of something new and something that we've been needing for a long time. I'm with a group in Albuquerque called Stop the War Machine, and if we can get pull our website up there, I'm just going to flash it up there to you. I didn't prepare a lot of slides and data, but I thought I'd pull up some things to try to illustrate a few things for you. Let me just briefly about myself. I'm a Vietnam veteran, was involved in the covert war in Laos and things like that, and saw the whole drug running and stuff that the CIA was doing, which started me on a whole path of awareness and information. And so I came back and got involved in the anti-war movement, helped start the VVAW, Vietnam Veterans Against the War, and then a group of us out of Albuquerque in '73 went to Wounded Knee and took part in the Native American uprising there. Did labor organizing for a number of years in steel mills, economic development, and then I moved back to Albuquerque after all the steel mills had closed and we lost our jobs. And I started a program there to get into education. And I started looking around Albuquerque, and the Kirtland Air Force Base was out there. And at first I thought it was sort of a benign kind of thing because I'd been in the Air Force and worked on nuclear weapons and things. But I began to, because I had an interest in all this, I just kept digging deeper and deeper into it, reading more and more, and I just became astounded at what I was finding. And along the way, Carol Miller and I, earlier before that, had ran for Congress as candidates on the Green Party tickets before, and then the attack on Iraq started shaping up after 9/11. So with my wife and I, we created this group called Stop the War Machine to focus upon the whole military-industrial complex with Dwight Eisenhower's famous statement about the dangers of the military-industrial complex. And we were looking around at what Albuquerque was, and we said, wow, we're sitting right here in the middle of this thing, you know, like this is something really to get involved in and take up. So we started a grassroots movement, and at that time a lot of people in the peace movement didn't want to criticize the military or the people at the base or in the labs. And so we said, well, we're going to do this, you know, we're just going to start holding demonstrations at the Kirtland Air Force Base and the military sites and trying to educate people, because people wanted to dumb themselves down around what was really going on. So there's a whole history to that went on up till about the time of the Occupy movement really became strong. We would mobilize demonstrations sort of repeatedly in the city, in town around the war. We'd go to Kirtland, we'd do campouts, we'd do vigils, anything that we could find when they were holding hearings and meetings like everyone has talked about here, we go to those. We go protest them sometimes when they're doing certain other kind of things. So we've been doing that for a good number of years there, and it's still continuing. And I wanted, so that's sort of the context of how we got into this and what we've been doing. Some of what I want to talk to you about, of some of the pieces of it. This is our website here. It's not up to date because our webmaster got married and had a couple babies, and she's been busy. But there are some things on there that just you can. I'm going to pull that one picture up there. No More War. That was at the local Chamber of Commerce conference meeting where they're all behind rah 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 for war. So we upset one of their meetings when they brought a lot of people out and stood there in the rain, and they've never been too friendly to us since then. Doing all that sort of upset their stories. Most people know sort of about New Mexico a lot for the nuclear weapons, the Manhattan Project, the testing of the weapons that went on at Trinity site. Los Alamos and Sandia Labs are sort of more known about that, and that's here. But what I began to learn and looking into this is that there's a lot more going on here in New Mexico. And in Eisenhower's term, what we come to the conclusion is that a place like New Mexico is a crown jewel in the whole military-industrial complex and the projection of power overseas, and all these projects of trying to build a global empire, which is what the economy they're trying to do. And so we thought, well, all the trouble we can make for them, good, you know, slow them down. And several times we have been able to shut down Kirtland with our demonstrations because they sort of panic and react when we show up out there, and they'll throw the tank barriers up and things like that with a number of people. So we've had some fun along the way, you know, doing these kind of things and protesting them, especially around the build-up to the war in Iraq and Afghanistan. So as we begin to look into this, most people the Kirtland Air Force Base sort of grew as a support base for Sandia National Lab in Los Alamos and the nuclear weapons project. But along the way in the Cold War, it became much more than that. And I'll just say a little bit about the nuclear weapons. Carol mentioned it earlier. New Mexico would probably be the second or third largest world power of nuclear weapons if it succeeded on its own. And there is somewhere between 1,000 and 5,000 warheads stored just off the runway. If you fly in and out of there to the south of the runway, they build a huge underground bunker that's top secret. You know, Congress people have sworn to secrecy and military secrecy. They won't talk about it, but it's been in the newspapers, and so everybody sort of knows about it. It's a very dangerous proposition for a city of 600,000 people to have all these nuclear warheads stored there. There's no emergency plans, evacuation, or prevention of anything would happen. We went through a whole number of years with who's now our state senator, when he was on city council, trying to get them to address this. No talk. They won't mention any of these things. So that's going on, but there's a lot more. As you look around Albuquerque, everybody's here. Boeing, Raytheon, General Dynamics, everybody, Northrop Grumman, everybody is involved in building all these weapons for the military-industrial complex. So what it turns out is that Kirtland has become sort of a center of research and development. It used to be called the Air Force Weapons Lab. They changed that and cleaned it up to call it Air Force Research. And this is the Kirtland website. I was going to show you some pictures of some of the things that they have been putting on there, but I thought it was interesting. There's nothing on there anymore. It's all sanitized and cleaned up. They've done a real PR job on...
they all have Tanit's website, everybody's site is...
Yeah. There's really nothing on there, and even if you follow the links about the environmental pollution and stuff like that, guys, you got to go through pages and pages and pages, and then there's usually no maps to indicating this stuff. So Kirtland, though, is drones were developed here in the 80s along with Israel before they started becoming a real big thing. Kirtland is involved in special operations. They call it pararescue, but it's preparations for it's the special warfare operations and things that are going on. Big training function there along with DOE and National Nuclear Security Agency. The base itself is a huge training site for counterinsurgency. They call it protected nuclear weapons and things like that. All this advanced weapons are coming out of there. We don't have a lot of weapons itself per se there, other than now the Ospreys, the CV-22s, and the C-130s, which are mainly there. But they do in conjunction with the research labs and the University of New Mexico, they do the advanced research on future weapons. So the prototypes come out of the electromagnetic bomb, the E-bomb, the electromagnetic devices to fry people. They call it perimeter control kind of things. All came out of research between the university and through contracts and the Air Force Base there. And then these get shipped out to people like Northrop or Boeing, and they develop them into weapon systems. And the airborne laser had an adventure there for a number of years. That 747 that they were going to put a laser on, that's sort of defunct. It was too big and too heavy. But one of the things that along the laser line, which is one of their big areas of development now, is on the south side of the base around a place called Manzano Mountains. There's a project called Starfire. Most people don't know about it. It was initiated during the Reagan years as a part of Star Wars. And it's interesting that the technology and the optics of it are really interesting because you can use this kind of a cool reflective optic mirror to do space observations. Really good for that. But it's also good to turn it around and modulate a laser beam through it, and it becomes a weapon. And this is basically an anti-satellite weapon. There's about 3 of them in existence that I know of in the Air Force. One's out in Maui, Hawaii. And so they've got a flight path for satellites coming from the west over Hawaii to Kirtland and New Mexico area. With this laser anti-satellite weapon, they can burn up satellites in orbit. They can just fry their electrical systems, which is what they intended, what they've been doing with it and practicing. There's a big plan to boost that and to improve the power of it. Boeing is heavily involved in that. Boeing and the Air Force have gone together to create a space warfare, what they call a weather center. As they're learning about space warfare, weather is a very important thing up there. We don't think about it, but it is. The conditions of the atmosphere, what's going on in space affects a lot of the optics and laser kind of stuff like that. So at Kirtland, one of the things we now got is a space warfare planning center, which depends a lot heavily on the weather aspects of it. So we've got a whole ton of things there. One of the things that I think fits into a lot of what we're talking about, noise and environmental pollution, exactly here, is the CV-22s and the C-130s. They have, like at Canon and other places, they have brought in a whole fleet of these things. And what Ruth, this is where I met Ruth going down to look at one of the displays of the projects on the CV-22s and the landing sites that they're developing under. Oh, and she didn't tell you either, the area she's working in is down, if you saw the movie Contact and the story about the Very Large Array, that's the area, beautiful area of New Mexico. It's like pristine, you'd want to live there. And big valleys and kind of things, and she's right on the edge of that. And this is where they're going to be flying, expanding these the war games and these operations. Well, Kirtland, along with Cannon and some other bases in the Southwest, are involved in this whole large operation. And Carol has been, you guys have been seeing it up here, and I started following what they were doing. Then we began to see, well, this thing's expanding down through the south part of the state too. And it's being done for special warfare training. They call it here pararescue. They, out of Kirtland, they have a big group called the 58 Special Operations Group, but these are basically hunter-killer teams. They go out in the middle of the night and kill people and then rescue their assassins that go out with them. They fly out of Kirtland, they train out of there. We see them all the time flying over a house. I don't see them from what we do, like you guys do up here, flying around, but we see them taking off and landing all night long. They'll go out towards sunset, fly out, and they'll come back in later in the middle of the night. And they've been out on these training missions, and they do it in the daytime too. We'll see them flying over with the C-130 refueling tankers. They practice the aerial refueling down towards Socorro, down towards Ruth's area. So the pararescue operations are a big thing there. Special forces training, and so we're just really involved in that, all that. And one of the latest things, if the site, if you can pull up that other one, which is the next one I got there.
SM map.
Yeah. We came across this, Carol and I, they recently. Let's see, it should go up there. And I think this is tied in with the Jade 15 project for the summertime too. Joint land use. This is preparing for a stronger region. I call it a super region. Kind of site here. West Texas, New Mexico, and some of Arizona. And if you go down to the bottom of this, there's a, let's see here, how to get there. Let's see, go back up here. Let me see here. Maps and reports. Down to the bottom of this, there is the one over on the right. Let's see, wait a minute, let me see. I think that's, go down a little bit. Here it is up here. Joint Land Use Public Meeting Round 3. There's a map here in this publication of what they're planning and move it. They're actually moving on this thing right now, joint land use. It's a huge training operation for these things. What they're doing is, and they very clearly have said that this is, they're doing a lot of this in the Southwest because this mimics the area of Afghanistan, Iraq, and Iran, where they want to project future wars. So this is where
That
they're
was good.
headed.
That was it,
Okay.
yeah.
Yeah, that's it there. You see Holloman up there.
Spaceport America.
Spaceport, Las Cruces is up there, Truth or Consequences. There's Fort Bliss in Texas, Texas-Mexico line. And from what I'm learning from Kathleen's and other projects like this, there's a whole, this is going on in piecemeal, pieces here and there and there and there. And it's not all put together because the Arizona projects, what you were talking about, bumps right up against this. And then there's other projects like this, what is it, Jude Helm 15, which is taking place in July, that incorporates all of this.
I've got that now.
You're going to talk about that some
Yeah.
more? Yeah. Which covers this whole area, which is basically a counterinsurgency program looking for insurgents inside the U.S., basically. Domestic repression. So,
What's that site? And what was the site that, I mean, the site that was preparing stronger region, what is that site?
SNM MEP joint land use.
Southern New Mexico, Texas.
Yeah, if I could, joint land use studies are going on all over the country. This is going to be one of the biggest. It's where the private sector basically gives up all of its authorities. The private sector and the public sector submit to the military needs. And it's pretty frightening. This is actually a piece of it. I've got the full map we could maybe look at later. But what's happened is the military thinks that the public is encroaching on the military. So these end up with encroachment agreements. And, you know, this is a very big one that's going on right now in New Mexico. And once again, it doesn't show that if you put the Cannon Joint Land Use Study next to it and the others, the entire country is being divided now with what land, land and air and sea space the military has access to, including things like blocking solar and wind energy development. The military has the final say about where wind turbines can be placed, where solar energy can be, so it doesn't interfere
Their operations, yeah.
with their low level. And also they say that wind turbines and solar arrays interfere with their radar. So we have this strange situation where a lot of us think if we move to more renewable energy, we wouldn't need as much war. But we have the military saying, well, actually, you can't have renewable energy because it interferes with their war planning. So,
And
sorry
what Carol
to...
is talking about, we discovered it in the documents for this project here. They also, what they're doing is they're going in and having little community meetings with chambers of commerce and business people and saying, well, look, all this is going to bring jobs and money to your area. We just want you to sign this agreement, usually the officials of the townships and things, that, you know, you won't say anything and do this kind of thing. And one of the things in there is they reserve the right to shut down GPS and cell phone communications and everything with local communities in addition to solar and wind and things like that, or people wanting to build. That means people will be blinded to what's going on, and they're going to be running into these war games. A lot of them are soldiers on grounds with checkpoints on the roads, airplanes, CV-22s and things in the sky. This is a full-scale big operation that they're planning. So anyway, Kirtland for us is a place where a lot of that's going on, operating out of, and we're trying to find out more, trying to educate people and do more about it. I just wanted to throw in a couple things too.
Excuse me, Bob,
Yes.
could you please speak to the jet?
Oh, jet fuel.
Oh, I have the slide on that.
You got that?
has the-
Okay.
Yeah.
Big problem there
We're
with jet
going to
fuel.
overlap a little bit, I think.
Yeah. There's a big jet fuel leak there that's been going on that's about to shut down the city main water well. And Carol's got some pictures of that. We'll cover that in that talk there. I just wanted to point out a couple of things too before my time's up here. That map that we saw in the first film that you showed the other night, the military bases, something about 1,000 of them. If I just happened to notice on it, and this came to mind to me because I teach political science at the community college, and one of my students this year was an older guy whose son's in the Army, Special Forces. And I had been talking about what's going on in Africa. That map showed no bases, no operations in Africa that weren't, it's out of date. he came up to me and he said, if you knew what was going on in Africa with these bases and special forces, it would blow your mind. His son's coming back. I mean, Africa is the new place where they're
See,
launching these operations.
that's the thing I was saying, base versus sites.
Mhm.
That's why we think there are about 900 bases, but there are 5,000 sites because they're not officially
Big
bases yet.
like what we got
Yeah.
here.
And those are the detected or
Right.
professed ones.
Right.
Yeah, and what they're going to in Africa is these things called lily pad sites where they can roll them up and move them after a few months if they want to. Temporary landing fields and barracks and things like that. So these are springing up all over the place. So I think my time's up. Thank you.
I'm gonna-